Hello and welcome, friends and family and keepers of the faith, to another blog. This one is blog 20, dated 10th of July 2022. And just want to start off by saying that thanks very much for the comments for last week's blog. I probably got a little bit emotional. I was in a bad way, but I always said that these blogs were supposed to be a montage of a type, where you see warts and all how my weeks have been, good or bad. When things are bad, you tend to find that you don't keep yourself very well. You're unshaven, can't be bothered to do lots of things. When things are going well or better, there's a more of a smile on your face, a more happy-go-lucky type of air about you when you're talking. And most of the time, I mentioned last week that term whiny bitch, and I still feel I am. Things are not going great. This week is no different. But the comments and how people have been towards me this week have kept me buoyant, I suppose is the best way to look at it. Anyway, let's kick off. We start off with the news, and my God, there's been a lot of news, and to be quite honest, none of it really interests me too much. The one difference is we start off with the war, and I've got an actual blank page for it. There's been more UK news, which I'm about to approach in a moment, that has meant that people haven't really been talking about the war. We know it's going on. We know Russia keeps advancing. There was a mention about the war all at the end of this week because of this next snippet, which is Boris Johnson. And if you don't know by now, you'll know that the week started bad for Boris Johnson, with lots of his party resigning, MPs with a lack of confidence in the Prime Minister. I think it went to 58 resignations. And then he finally decided that he would resign from his post, something that he said he would never do, and gave a speech outside of number 10 explaining about all his positives and the reason behind him resigning, which he thought was for the good of the party, but he didn't want to do it because he had a job to do and he wanted to see that job through. Well, yeah, I mean, if I was resigning, and that might be something in a little bit when I talk a bit later, you want to always reflect on the good. You don't want to reflect on the bad. That's just human nature. But after that resignation, the papers and all the media have been doing montages of the last 3 years. The one thing I will say about Boris Johnson is, other than other prime ministers, is that you tend to find there is one major event in the 4 years that they're in term, and he's had 3, and all, possibly 4, and all of them have come in 2.5 years, 3 years of him being where he is. You've had Brexit, which he got through. You've had the pandemic. Then you've got everything that goes on from that with our current status with energy bills and normal living. And then you've got the war in Ukraine. And to be quite honest, even if you look back as far as Margaret Thatcher, there was the Falklands, which was one part, and poll tax, which was another defining part, and then there was getting everybody back into work, which was another part, and then there was the privatisation of everything, which was another part, and there were year gaps between these things. He's had it thrown all at him. So, but it's not about those things he stood up and tried. It's just that the man is a liar. As much as he keeps turning round and saying, I'm not, evidence is shown that you are. And even before you took over being Prime Minister, you wrote articles in papers which had condemning language that showed possibly your true character. He always said that it was tongue-in-cheek. No. So I'm not going to reflect on politics because it's just not in me. But when Margaret Thatcher died, it was ding dong, the witch is dead. When it comes to Boris Johnson, I hope to God that the next one that comes in has a much different character to Boris. I don't think the Conservatives can turn this around. And my next concern is Keir Starmer, because I don't like Labour's policies, and I don't like his particular methods of talking. Everything always seemed to be a get at Boris. It was like you're an easy target. So I'm just going to keep mentioning how bad you are. In fact, his closing comments on his term was he was never fit for office, which you could possibly turn around and say, yeah, that's damn true. But after somebody has just resigned, usually in America, say, when Biden came in, it was up to Trump to turn around and say, I wish you well, and all of that sort of stuff. And if you have interviews, reflect on the positives, because why kick a person while they're down? We know they're down. So I'm a little bit like that. So that's two, politics and war out the way. Energy bills. So what I've read is the energy cap, which is currently at £1,971 a quarter, could reach £3,300 a year this winter, which is coming. But it does not take into consideration the £400 discount for every home owner this October. So again, you've got another Boris Chancellor policy thing coming in saying we're going to give you some more money, which of course we're going to have to pay back. And you've got an energy crisis that basically has gone from 200 odd pounds, which people could just about afford, up to 1,971 according to this report, which it is now, and going up to 3,300. This is where a little bit more pressure is on me in regards to going back to work and just biting the bullet. How can my mother, a pensioner in her 80s, cope with that? And how can I help without having money coming in? So you can imagine reading that report just adds some extra added pressure. And then, not a fun one, but just to end on a slightly different note, apparently there's been a war going on between Heinz, the company that make baked beans, and Tesco. The prices have gone up, and Heinz have told Tesco how much it's going to cost to continue stocking their shelves. Tesco decided they weren't going to pay it. Heinz then boycotted and said, you're not going to get our product then. And after several weeks, and I haven't been to Tesco to check whether it's been difficult to find the Heinz range of baked beans, etc. in their aisles, they buckled and said, okay, we'll pay it. Heinz Gate, everything's got a gate these days, isn't it? So there's been a debacle there, and it's been finalised by Tesco caving. Nothing more I can say about that other than thank God, because the war in Ukraine has already caused problems enough with, if you read some of the reports back that I've read out, sunflower oil is a major thing that we import, and apparently there was only 2 bottles per person for a certain period of time. And I have to state that the war is as I say, I'm a big promoter that Ukraine get what they want back, get this war finished. Half of these problems in regards to how much we're paying in the pumps for filling our cars, the energy crisis, etc., they're not just for the UK and us as a nation struggling. It's a worldwide thing. So when people start saying petrol's gone up, and I believe they're doing that because they need the money to pay back for furloughing during the pandemic and so forth, no. England's always been taxed 2 or 3 times for fuel. The fuel's gone up because of these things that are going on in the world. It's just that where politicians have the power to remove some of that taxation, they haven't. But that taxation has been there. I remember James May in the Top Gear programs moaning about it through in one of the seasons that him and Clarkson and so forth did their shows. Nothing's really changed. So let's get this all sorted in the next months and years, because we've got no money and we're not going to go to prison for it. The thing that upsets me the most sometimes is things like the TV license. It's just stupid. The government pulled out because they got sick of paying money, and the BBC said, okay, we'll try and curb down our expenses by cutting wages and so forth, but then continued to then say that if you're retired over 75, doesn't matter, the government's not paying that anymore, so you're going to have to pay your £159 like anybody else. How can my 80-year-old mother do that? BBC, you've had so much money to change your charter. If you need to go digital now, and therefore make it a paid channel like Netflix, do so. Let's see how many people will pay your monthly bill of £8 a month for your BBC channels and your radio channels to keep funding being able to watch a TV. Don't send me to prison because I like to watch ITV, which doesn't have a license fee for it. You need to change. We're in the 21st century. Enough of my rant. So we'll talk a little bit about me. Well, I had more bad news, and I don't know quite what to say about it, really. As you know, I've been off work with stress. This week I need to take more readings and send them off because it's the 2nd to 3rd week of changing my medication. I spoke to my union rep right at the same day as me not going back to work. I filled in a tribunal form. I sent that to my union rep, who's been lovely, who works for the police force, and been trying to speak to a union person who's a lawyer, who's been the hardest person for me to speak to. And basically, I kept sending emails, I kept leaving voicemail messages. Sometimes I was getting messages saying back that he was on holiday for a week, and then when he came back, he was back for about 4 days, and he took another week's holiday. And to the point where I managed to speak to him on Monday, and he couldn't get to my case notes. Another frustration for me. And he wanted to go the softly approach and write a letter to say that I want to go back, but the essence of me wanting to go back is if I can't have a title of manager, that my skill set is recognised, because part of my grievance was that I was totally mismatched, and they agreed I was mismatched. So I always thought I had a case. He came back on Friday and said he had the bad news to tell me that there was no point going forward with a grievance, and there was no point going through for a tribunal, because in his terms they have done what they call crossing the T's and dotting the I's, which is why they felt so strongly in the appeal by retracting everything. And I said, how can a company like the Ministry of Justice get away with this when they've agreed that there was a mismatch? And he said it's all down to Tupi law. In the TUPE law, the most important aspects is that you keep your job, no matter what it is, and that your pay is not affected, so you're not discriminated against in regards to managing to keep a wage going, so they can't drop your wages. And I told him that, but they agreed that they mismatched me. And then he started to tell me the other things, which is true. But you had the chance to appeal, for which I then said, yes, but the appeal process was only the first 2 weeks of the mismatch. The mismatch wasn't discovered until 3 months later, after the appeal. And the job title was the only thing that I was questioning, for which I put the question to HR and said that there was nothing for me to appeal against, because the appeal process was purely on the fact that manager was being taken away, and at the time they'd only shortened my title and it still had manager in it. What he agreed with was that they used a horrible loophole which you have no control over, which is they counted down the clock. So as they counted down the clock, they started to introduce things like, would you like to talk to this team that I think you might be interested in, that might be better than the job that you're in? Of course, I was looking at that from a point of view of, you're offering me a job where I'm going to be a manager instantly, and that wasn't the case. But they look at that as part of the appeal process, where if you appealed, they would offer you a different job. So you can see, as this has gone on, they've used the ticker tape of timing down the clock to the point where you got nowhere to turn. And then at the very end, they can basically say, we offered you everything, you turned down everything, and therefore we can't take time back. We recognise we can't take time back. There are no jobs where there were at the beginning. We can't create a job because we'd have to advertise it. So basically, live with it. He's going down the softly approach again, because I did tell him I only had 2 weeks in the appeal process. Whichever way you look at it, more emphasis could have been made for me to continue with the appeal process. They took their time over everything, and I'm pretty sure there's a law break here, because even if you look at the grievance process starts, and apparently the first part of the grievance process is 4 weeks, then you have a meeting, then that person at the end of that grievance has 2 weeks to answer, for which then you have your answer and you can appeal. They then have 2 weeks, well, a week to arrange a meeting, 2 weeks to answer it, and therefore the process should take about 2 months, maybe a week over 2 months, something like that. I started it in January. May, end of, was when it finished. So all the time I was told, sorry, we haven't come back in a certain amount of time, we've been busy, people that I needed to speak to have been on holiday, all which I've accepted, because if you go too hard with these things, they can just basically come hard back at you. And I was trying to go with the, I'll accept that type thing, but I did that verbally during the grievance meetings. I told him, you've got to look at this and go, they counted down the clock. They knew that all the time they were doing this, they were getting work out of me. And then they got to the point where we can't take time back and there are no jobs. So basically they win on a technicality. It's almost like a TKO. We'll see what he does with this letter. It looks very much like I'm going to be the loser on this, that I will have to keep looking for a job, take redundancy, or seek compensation, or go down another route like constructive dismissal. At the end of the day, I just want it to end, and they've sort of like beaten me down to a point where I don't want to go on. I haven't got the energy. Very, very, very tough for me this week, and thank you very much for all of your comments. They've helped me no end. Anyway, shout outs. Let's get some fun back into these sort of things. So as you know, I do a shout out. I'm not embarrassed to do these shout outs. These people are my friends, and they've all made lovely comments to me and given me advice and spurred me on to keep doing things. And I've also been doing some other little walkthrough game type things, which I've had encouragement to keep doing those types of things. I don't think they're very good at all, but they are fun to do, and you see how bad I am at stuff. But anyway, shout outs to Wee Bob Art, 20th Century Gaming, Robert's Retro Gaming, Down the Rabbit Hole, Panther UK, Colin Jones, Steve's 8-Bit Gaming, Martroid, Jambon, Colin Ferguson, Milfy Swinbuckle, Ox, and Stevie Paperboy. And each one of those has put some type of comment in either the game part or the blog part that I'm doing right now. And I've had to go back over all of those to find all the names. So if I've missed one, I do apologise. And there have been some that I have to apologise, like for Steve. Steve has commented on just about everything I do, but I don't see them. And then when I review my channel, they're in a spam folder. I have no idea why. But then I've had to write no end of comments all in one go, and had to remind myself what I was talking about in these blogs. So it's taken me an age to actually go back, and I'm still catching up. So please bear with me with that. Now, some of these people have asked questions, and some of them I've answered in text format, and that's just purely for speed. But I'm going to answer some of these in the blog, because I think that some of them are fun and some of them are too complex for me not to do it otherwise. So first off, Wee Bob. Now, he wanted to know, sort of, by my steel books and my big box covers, what are my favourite type of cover art? And that's a difficult one when you consider I've got 2,000-3,000 boxed media for film and no end of box art, but unfortunately some of it is in storage, which is why you only get to see a snippet. I think the best way to describe the type that I like is, when it comes to boxed art, I like a drawn cover. We all like the pictures on the back that say this is the actual game, but I do like a depiction on the front that's exciting, or something about what the game is about. And usually I like an artist to draw something. We all know about some of those ones in the past, like in the Commodore 64 days, the Barbarian cover was a photograph of Maria Whittaker and Wolf from Gladiators, which is a photo which looked great, and it was perfect for that type of game, but was risque, and in some cases I think it was banned for a short period of time. The poster definitely was. And then there was a game called Game Over, I think, where there was a cover that clearly covered the body. This is a drawn picture. Clearly covered the body of the lady, but there was the nipplegate situation where you can see the protruding erect nipple underneath the clothes type thing, which it was funny and everybody wanted it, and nobody really drew breath about it until some, I think, teacher or parent or adult commented about it, and then suddenly it was a, oh my god, you can't do this, and they had to go back and retouch up the art. But by that point everybody had got the cover, so ridiculous. So I don't know whether I've answered you, Wee Bob, but let me just quickly go over to my collection. So when I talk about montages, I'm talking about something like this, which is a drawn picture of Colin, and then you've got all of the villains that are in this particular season in the middle, with a nice time warpy, pastel-y background to indicate time and space. A montage. So that's just a sort of like an example of what I mean by a montage. And I hope that answers your question. Now, Colin Jones, he wanted to know what are my favourite, or what do I consider good and bad in regards to remade games, actual games that I need to mention that are good remakes and bad remakes. And as you know, I've been doing some game type reviews of old games that have been reimagined, you know, a lick of paint put on them. I've only started doing that recently, and I must have played hundreds of remakes. You know, I haven't done, say, Bruce Lee, and I haven't done Robotron. They're all been remade. They've all been given a slap of paint. Some more extensive than others. I've always turned around and said that if you're going to remake something, don't destroy the essence of what it was, because in most cases you've got a chance here of correcting something that was broken, but also then giving it a slap of paint and making it so it looks more exciting than the limitations that were made for the machine it was being written for. So I've done a few things like Bounty Bob and Boulder Dash and things like that, which you can go and look for, and you'll see that it's not just about the slap of paint. You can ruin it, and Boulder Dash is a perfect example. So if you really want to know a bad one, and it was the first one this week, which was Missile Command, that offended me as a game. That's the one where if I was labelling things A, B, C, D and F for fail, it'd be F for fail and you've offended me. But when it comes to a good one, I don't think I've come across one quite yet that I go, wow. But Gravitron 2 comes pretty close, because that really is thrust in a new coat of paint without losing any of the essence of the game. And the only thing is that we look at the shortfalls then by saying, oh, I wish they'd put a level editor in or something, right? Just because we're greedy. And then there was one that I mentioned in the waffle with Mainmeister called Melchus Mansion, which I've downloaded and not played yet. But apparently it's Attic Attack, as if it was designed in a Night Law engine, but running at the speed of Attic Attack. And it even looks like the Spectrum version of Night Law. So what they've basically done is they've turned everything isometric and made Attic Attack, and put a touch of paint over some of the rougher edges. Like if you remember in Attic Attack, you go down a well and you've got just a square that came towards you, you know, as if you were falling down a well. In this one, they've turned it side on, and you can see your little character waving its arms about as if it was going to fall to its death, and then it lands right in the centre of the level that you've landed at with a bit of a shudder, and then you start playing again. It's little touches like that where I'm saying that's what I'm talking about in regards to changing something but not changing something. So go pick that one up. I think that one looks interesting. But I think Zenith, the Sentinel remake, is another one that I need to mention, because the actual coder of that game has come back to me and he liked my review, and the only thing he commented on really was he'd have preferred if I'd have done some harder levels, and I have to agree with him and say, look, it was just really an introduction to people to say, look how clean this looks and how easy it is to play, and that it's not a complex game to understand at all. So I've told him I would, and he's mentioned some of the shortcomings of that game himself and why they were there. The comment is in that review, so take a quick look. It's worth possibly some of your time. Steve, he's asked me a couple of questions. We all love Steve. He's doing lots and lots of his reviews. He's coming out with lots and lots every week. I'm starting to think that he's drinking the same broth Panther's bloody drinking. What is it? What is it with you? How much stamina have you got, man? For God's sake. You sound like Bart Simpson. No, you don't. We love you to bits, Steve. But he asked, T-shirts. Do I have one special one? And is there a film that I've tried to get that I haven't got? Easy answer for you here, Steve. I don't have any special T-shirt, one that I put on more than any other. I go for Marvel character type ones. I mean, today I've got Wolverine. And the reason that I have so many, and they're still polyphened up, is that there used to be, when I used to go into a comic store, you used to order 3 months in advance for your comics, and the merchandise was at the back of the book. It was called Previews, and it's still going now. And they always listed all the posters and all the T-shirts and all the books and all of the statues and all the action figures and everything, right? Everything to do with Marvel, DC, Image, all of those. And I was getting what I considered American T-shirts over here with no import, because they were Fruit of the Loom, and basically the T-shirts worked out to be about £6 or £7 back then, and T-shirts over here were always in packs of 3 plain ones for a tenner or something. So I was getting a Fruit of the Loom T-shirt from America with an image on, for the price of £6 or £7. It was a no-brainer, so I'd buy 3 every month, and I did that for 3 to 4 years before I moved to Manchester. So by that point, if you do the maths, I was it was 3 T-shirts a month for 3 years. 36 times 3, over 100, so 120 odd, and I haven't gone through them. So maybe that wasn't a waste of money, Mother. You listening? And yes, I mentioned in one of my blogs the film, and the best version of Blade Runner is a Japanese Laserdisc pressing. Never found it. It's never been transferred, that pressing, to Blu-ray or 4K. It's been redone. You could possibly say it's been surpassed, but because I read that article and because so many private collectors mentioned, yes, oh my God, this pressing is absolutely fantastic, I've always wanted it, can never find it. So that answers that. Martroid answered one that took me back to a very early time, the Amiga. And when I bought my A1000, there literally was nothing on the market. Absolutely nothing, because I bought it within within a month of the A1000's release. And the very first game I went out and bought was a game that he wanted me to discuss, which was, did I play a game called Mind Walker? And I have great memories of Mind Walker because it didn't look all that special. If you can imagine how Workbench looks like, which is which really was like Windows 3.1. You even double clicked on the icon to open it up, and it had that Windows border type thing. It wasn't full screen or anything. And the game was just so weird. It made it sound like it was really big because it did this sort of like mapping of your mind in colors and quadranted it out. And that meant it looked like a thermal image. You know, it was just huge reds, lighter reds, going to yellow, blue for cold. And then each one of those little blocks was a level. And you had to traverse this level, which when you actually went into it was a 3D representation of plinths with this little magician character. And he wandered around and he could fire lightning bolts, and there were these creatures that sort of homed in on you if you stayed on the screen for too long. So you used your lightning bolts to fire all these things, and you were looking for a piece of your mind, which you then had to take that piece back to repair your mind. If that sounds interesting to you, it sounded interesting to me when I played it, and I played it to death. But was it executed very well? Oh my God, it looked like it was something written in BASIC. But I loved it, and the soundtrack was earworm. It was blips and blobs, but they were those blips and blobs coming from a sound chip that was so crystal clear. But it really was not a soundtrack you could hum to. So I hope that answers your question, Martin. Yes, I played it. Did I enjoy it? Yes, I did. Do I think anybody talks about that game? No. No one talks about that game. Fantastic question. Thank you so much. Jambon asked, have I seen a film called Trancers? Yes, is the answer. I have had, should I say, the good fortune to watch it, because it is a film of its time. We're talking the 80s, and if anybody knows anything about directors, and if I mention the word Roger Corman to anybody, you'll sort of know the low budget I'm talking about. And this was a 20, what was it? You'll have to remind me, Jammer, was it a 23rd, 24th century future cop that was looking for trancers? Now, doesn't this sound a little bit like Blade Runner? And then this particular crime lord that was making these trancers, which basically were zombies, went back in time, and you went back in time by a drug, which meant that you could then transport yourself back in time, but only back into one of your ancestors. Oh, let me see, has that been done before? Yes. Back in 1983, less so possibly. Looking for this crime lord and killing the trancer epidemic. Yes, I have seen that film. Yes, it's incredibly low budget. Yes, it was fun. I saw it on VHS. Helen Hunt was in it from Mad About You, and I mean, the only film I can really think of with her in it is As Good As It Gets with Jack Nicholson, and I think she was in What Women Want. I mean, she's been in loads, but I mean, those ones come to mind. Yes, Jambon, I've seen it. Moving on, Milfy. Right, Milfy made a slightly easier question. He said, I've got 3 months locked in a room, and I can only have 5 games for one system, the Commodore 64. What are those 5 games and why? It's pretty much like choosing your favourite game, really. But in this case, you know that you've only got 3 months. Makes it a bit easier, really, because how bored are you going to get of a game, especially if you choose a long one? So the ones I chose were Elite, duh. That's a long game, you know, so days and days can go by on that. Whizball Arcade. What can you say about Whizball? Absolutely fantastic. Arcadey skill set type game. Great. Monty on the Run for the music, and it's a platform game, so I've chosen a platform game, and I can listen to that music over and over and over again. Pirates, because it's a strategy game, and again, you can spend weeks in that game. It's strategy, you're on boats, pirates, you're plundering, you're building your army of boats, you get the gist. And then you've got to have a beat 'em up, and I suppose International Karate Plus is the one that I would choose. Some people would go Way of the Exploding Fist way. I think I'll go for the last known good one that I think beat 'em up wise, which was International Karate Plus. So I hope that answers that question, Milfy. And then I'm just going to turn my attention to you lovely guys and what you've been bringing out with. Robert, now you've been doing your Atari games and you've been bringing them out over and over and over. My God, your output is just astronomical. You've brought out today Metagalactic Llama's Battle at the Edge of Time, a fantastic VIC-20 game that you've now shown me on the Atari. And you continue to show me old classics that I've either played or ones that I missed because I didn't have my Atari for that long. I've still got the Atari, but it's boxed, and I never really took it out to play any of the stuff because most of the stuff was on the Commodore 64. Thank you for doing that, Robert, and please go and visit his channel. Steve, you know what I've said about you. Absolutely fantastic, your stuff. You keep bringing out even newer games, and you gave me the honor of choosing a game this week for you to play on. it was great seeing how bad you were at Whizball. Yeah, you're bad. No, you're not really that bad. You showed just about every aspect of that game, which is just what you want. If anybody turns around and says that's a bad game, I do understand those people, but they're wrong. So then there is LFC. And LFC, Mainmeister sort of like told me that you'd mentioned me in your blog because you've started to do your blog again. But I already knew about it and I answered it, I think, within about 30 minutes of you bringing it out. I do watch your stuff and I've, have listened to a few blogs. I'm sorry I haven't commented too much, but I've always thumbed it up. And it was very nice of you to shout out to me and point out that I'm not alone and that we all go through bad parts of our life. Mainmeister said it probably best, which is these things are temporary. They're in your mind at the moment and they seem huge and large. In 5 years' time, they won't seem so. And I have to try and put that in my mind every day when I wake up. It's just incredibly difficult. So thank you, LFC. And Rabbit. Now, Rabbit is basically going away for a little while. So his output's going to be a little bit less. But he did an interesting one where you saw Mortal Kombat, the arcade, running on Mega Drive hardware. Now, I would be impressed with that back in the day. But as we move forward, I've become less and less interested in those. I'm pretty sure a lot of people saw the development of Outrun ROMs being run on a 1 meg Amiga, and they just rewrote the engine, but basically the ROM set is what powered the game. This is exactly the same thing. They've taken the ROMs, they've passed it through the Mega Drive's graphic chip and sound chip. And they did a pretty good job, and back in the day that would have been great. Now, less impressed. You can do that now by hacking mini consoles, all sorts of stuff. So, very, very interesting though. If you look at it, you'll see the speed of it, how good it looks. Definitely worth a watch. Ponder has done his bicycle trip type videos, which scare the hell out of me. Now, he always comments back to me when I say something like that. Go, yeah, but that's 1 or 3% of my bike ride and all this sort of stuff, and it's over a period of a month. I don't give a shit. I don't get in my car and get scared to death when I'm trying to go to work. On yours, I'd be scared to death. Me, bike rides going through the park. I don't trust the roads, and that's because I don't trust other drivers. I'm a good driver, or I consider myself a good driver, but then again, don't we all? But I do know this, I'm not an arsehole. If I make a mistake, I put my hands up. I don't do that while I'm driving. Take my hand off the wheel. I'm not stupid. But I don't drive off, and I don't purposely try and cut people up. And I've already mentioned that I don't like it when they label Audi drivers and BMW drivers like that. They're all bad. Christ, you want to see the school run outside my house every morning? It's atrocious. Keep those up, Ponder. Plus, you're doing your high score kerfuffle, and you're doing Lamatron, an old fave of mine. Only you're playing it on ST. My gameplay on that was the Amiga. There's not much between them. Go and watch his video. He will tell you the differences between the two. He will show you the strategies he is using, and you will see his score. And then I'm pretty sure it might be interesting for you to join the Discord and see how far he goes up that ladder. Not every game is easy to play for every user. This is a twin stick shoot 'em up, and a hard one, and a fun one. So definitely that. And then just to sort of end on things, 20th Century, who started to play Gravitron about must be about 2 weeks ago now. He completed all 42 levels, all documented in his videos. You see him playing it, and oh my god, what a game, and what a master of control, because I would have thrown my keyboard if I was using keyboard controls on that against the wall. I would have got to a brick wall of, say, like level 16 or 17 and said, I don't want to go any further. I just don't. And he just goes, it's nothing. And he just plays. And it's like, wow. And I thought I had patience. So well done 20th Century Gaming on showing that perseverance is king. And then we'll just come to the end on what I normally do, which is basically show you what's come this week. So not much, because as you know, I'm broke and I've cut things down. The second part of my Indiana Jones film movie cover collection has come through, Temple of Doom. It looks quite nice. The thing about this is you can't see how glossy it is because I've got the sheen still over it because I've still got the wrappering on it. But that's the movie poster, or one of them, because one of the movie posters was a silhouette of him at the front gate of walking into a temple. So I really like that one. And then I've got the full season of Chucky, which I really liked. The production values in Chucky were really good, and I do like a bit of horror. But my sister always found it, the scariest horror was always the ones where they could come true, and a doll coming to life. Go figure. Don't have anything at the bottom of your bed that looks like a doll, because it's going to come to life and stab you. No, I don't wish my sister dead, but I don't get on with her very well, but you get the idea. So then we talk about a purchase that only cost me a tenner, which was my retro A500 Mini. And why did I buy this? Well, there's a couple of reasons. I have no affiliation or nostalgia about the A500 because I had an A1000. I had the machine before it. But while the A500 was out, the A1000 was just virtually the same. And I had a 1 meg expansion on my A1000. It came with the 512, so if you can imagine, the first A1000s really only had 256 meg of RAM, and it had to have a front expansion, and those were pretty much put into all of the machines and sold when they got to this country over here, because it had been out in the States for about a month or so. And so I have one of the biggest loves of the Amiga, because I had a huge 5, 6, 7 years of Commodore 64 use, and then another huge 5, 6 years of Amiga use before I moved into PCs and consoles. PCs more than consoles, but I've mentioned that before. And so, yes, an A500 Mini, it's the first Mini really I've actually bought, to be quite honest. I don't think I've got another one. But because I've got the Commodore 64 large, you know, the just called the C64, and that's what we'll call it. So would I have bought a A500 large version? Possibly. But this imitates up to a 1200. I've looked at lots of videos now. I have not updated the firmware yet because they've blocked the use of RetroArch on it, and they're looking for a way to get around that at the moment. So I refuse to update the firmware yet, and I know that if I don't update the firmware, that certain features like WHD load are buggy. So I'll just wait another couple of weeks. They'll get around that exploit, and basically the fixes will be in place and RetroArch will be able to go on it. Why RetroArch? Well, the reason for that is it's using an older version of the emulator, and RetroArch is then your backup for you to play CD32 stuff. So CD32 stuff plays on the A500 out the box, but you'll tend to find they're slow, and the options they give you to change things like blitter control, copper control, processor speed, they're not there in an easy way to get to. So under RetroArch, you can then play the CD32 and it'll be at the same speed, the right speed. They'll fix these bugs, and that's why I'm looking forward to that. And then we're going to come across my big box gaming. Oh my god, these ones are a little bit heavy this time. So you can see the sort of top of the box on this one. I can't go anywhere without talking about Tycoon games, and Roller Coaster Tycoon was one that I got. It's one of the earlier ones. It's the isometric view one before they went all 3D. These, like Theme Park and Dungeon Keeper and all of those, were very big on my list, because very nice to try and use your creative brain to design something, and then use your analytical brain to set the figures for how much it was going to cost and hiring staff and all of that sort of stuff. I played them to death, to be quite honest. I always mention a role-playing game. You can't go anywhere without mentioning Ultima. My Ultima started with the Commodore 64 with Ultima 1 or 2. But that was very hard to get hold of. It wasn't even in a big box. I bought this one because it was on CD-ROM, and the CD-ROM had the speech add-on, where the floppy disk version that did come out at the same time as this didn't have the speech. So I paid the little bit extra and had the CD-ROM edition of that. Buggy as hell, not the best version. Isometric, still good, but a low point when you consider what Ultima 7 was. Mech Warrior, mentioned these before, but I only mentioned the strategy side of these things. Star Siege is in big robots as well. I usually got these because they were shoot 'em up type games, but 3D, and they were much easier to control, I found, than Quakes and Dooms, where in those games it was you and you fired against others that were coming at you. I felt that I had some sort of way of doing something in Mech Warrior. I don't know what it is, because you could still come across a real bastard of a player. But I got into the robot games for some reason and did. Now this one I tried to play. I spent lots and lots of time on it and could never quite get into it enough. And the box is a bit damaged, by the way, for me to continue playing it. It was called Stars. You can see the price I paid for it. By Empire. Don't hear too much about them. And it says the premier space strategy game. And if you have a look on the back, it's not really exciting. It really does look like, look, it says Windows 95 in the corner. It really does look like a Windows spreadsheet. You know, lots of little windows of your ship with some stats, and another window right next to it of a planet, and another window of the universe you're in, and another window with some figures for the things that you're going to buy in Spaceport and so forth. I don't know if this had a big manual or not. I'm pretty sure it did, and I don't know if I can show it you quickly. I will try. But yes, here we go. So if you really want to know how to play this game, and this is not in other languages, that's the manual. Yes, and I read that manual and I still didn't know what the hell I was doing. Yes, you can play it on up to Windows 7, I believe, and you can use other methods to work on Windows 10. Is it worth you looking out for it? Just from a retrospective point of view, yes, but if you're going to try and get into it, prepare to lose your life. And that's the end. Thank you so much, and I hope you continue to send your comments to me. It's difficult for me at the moment. The weather's nice. That's a plus. I'm about to go for my walk while this is encoding. I hope you get some enjoyment by watching it and continue to watch my life as it progresses. Maybe you should go back to the first one, see what I look like there, and then look at this one and see whether anything is really changing. My hair definitely has. And thanks to everybody that's making content. You really do brighten our lives. Continue to do so. Thank you so much, and until next week, bye-bye.